received in Italy and also perceived in Italy, of course. Welcome, Mr. Gambacci.
Thanks for the invitation.
Before we jump into our discussion, the ECPM organization has asked if I could very briefly set a little bit the context of these three events and to provide a quick overview of the recovery tools that we will be discussing in these sessions. But before we do that, I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Jack Bazen. I am treasurer of ECPM, and in the daily life, so to say, I work as a lecturer at Saxion University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, and my fields of research and lecturing are entrepreneurship and innovation management, as well as regional economic development. So very close to most of the subjects that Mr. Ruijsen is working on in the European Parliament. Right. You will see here. You will see in the live stream a visual aid that was prepared by the colleagues of ECPM about actually the funds that are being given to let Europe grow out of the crisis. When you take a look, you see that it's a tremendous amount of money. Now we're talking about 1.8 trillion euros, of which not everything is money that is being raised because of the COVID crisis. If we take a look, it basically breaks down into two parts. First of all, it's the multi-annual financial framework of the EU, which is, so to say, the normal budget that the EU spends on different policies, among others, of course, on entrepreneurship, on innovation, on you name it. And if you take a look, that is always a planning period of 7 years. So this 1.74 billion, 1,074 billion is for a period of 7 years. So when you divide it by 7, you come to about 150 billion euro per year. That is, yearly about spent. That is the one part. And of course, when we take a look at the other side of the screen, the left side, the Next Generation EU, the so-called COVID Recovery Fund, that is a temporary extension for 5 years on top of this, basically this multi-annual framework. And I'm sure almost all of us will remember the tough discussions last year that were done in Brussels to come to an agreement on this amount of money, where we had the frugal four with Mr. Rutte, the Dutch Prime Minister, who was not so much in favor of it, and so on and so forth, and lots of discussions. But finally, this plan was being drafted, 750 billion euros. Most of this money goes to the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is the money that goes to member states in terms of loans and grants to grow out of the crisis and to recover, to let their businesses recover. So that's by far the largest part, but it's not everything. You see there is many more. Another one is, for example, React EU. That will be also a very interesting fund especially for regional development, for small and medium-sized enterprises, where we will discuss in these sessions about these issues. The React EU, there will be very soon, the first tranche will be open. So I'm curious how that will go. The next part, which has some extra money, because it's a plan which is already in the multi-annual framework, and I think known by all academics in the Horizon Europe, that is the European, it used to be called Horizon 2020 before. It is the European program to support fundamental research. And that is being raised by 5 billion because of the COVID crisis. So extra money for innovation. And we will see a little bit later why that is maybe quite useful to do. Then there is another thing which I would like to highlight here, that is the so-called Invest EU. It's not just that money is given to member states or to businesses in terms of projects that they can directly apply for at the European Union, as in React EU, but also Invest EU gives possibilities for intermediary organizations to fund small and medium-sized enterprises. Okay. There is some extra money for rural development, which is for me personally as a researcher very interesting. Then there is money available related to bringing small and medium-sized enterprises in contact with investors, and the so-called project portals, and so on and so forth. And then the last one I would like to highlight here before we go into the some other more things about entrepreneurship is the SURE program. And that is a program of 100 billion euros to fight the negative effects and the risks of unemployment. So that is something that also is available in the form of loans in principle, and only available for the most affected member states. That's also something to add here. All right, I would like to skip the Connecting Europe facility and Escalar as because these are in focus in the second and third parts of this series. Right. Then, yeah. It's a dazzling amount of money that we are talking about. That means, at least, I think for most people. And the question is very often raised, where does all this money come from? Huh? Is that going to be a risk for Europe, for the European taxpayers? If we take a look at the amount of money, it seems indeed very large, but if you see what amount of money is circulating throughout the European Union, it's actually just 1 or 2% extra, so which is not a lot. And the European Union is going to raise a lot of this money itself on the capital market. This is something quite new, and also what is quite new and will be discussed in some of the other sessions will be the fact that it also will induce some direct EU taxes. That is also something which is new in this plan. Right. So far, so good about the ideas. Let's take a look at entrepreneurship. I would like to, I have another graph. If we can have a look at the next graph, then we will see there that there is quite a change in European spending at this moment because of this COVID recovery fund. We see that there is a lot of increase in spending in generic investments and in investment of development of and entrepreneurship in small and medium-sized enterprises. And at the same time, there is so-called a shift, so a disinvestment or decrease of funding for research and innovation processes in small and medium-sized enterprises. So there is a sort of a shift from one end to the other. And that may be very logical because at this moment, I suppose that many small and medium-sized enterprises are fighting for survival and have these kind of needs first before going again into investment or into investment in research and innovation. And therefore, a project like Horizon 2020, a program like Horizon 2020 can be very useful. Then there is one more slide where we talk about the 19 most affected countries, where those are shown. If we can have a look at this slide, we see that the biggest benefactor in terms of SME funding from this new COVID recovery plan is Italy. It seems more than, we have to understand that part of the money is transfer, what I just said, from more innovation support to more general investment into general support of SMEs. And so if you take if you subtract the transfer, you will see that Italy comes to about 1.5 billion euro net extra for small and medium-sized enterprises, which is quite an interesting thing. Now, so far, so good. And I think the stage is now set for having a little bit of discussion and some questions. And I would like to begin to ask Mr. Ruijsen first to give us a little bit of more insight. I mean, you are, really in Brussels within the whole environment. What was the purpose behind this putting together such a very expensive recovery plan? Can you say something more specific, maybe about the areas targeted and the conditions that are attached to some of these issues?
Yes, Jack, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's really, I think, really a good thing that we as ECPM are organizing these kind of events to, in order to show how important for us, support is for entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized entrepreneurs especially. So thanks for that. Yes, well, what happens indeed was a reason for this this important package. I think, well, we all know what happens last year with the outbreak of the pandemic, outbreak of the COVID, which caused a major crisis, a health crisis, but also an important economic crisis all over the world, but also in Europe. So that was the main, that was a reason why the Commission came up with this proposal for this Corona Fund, Recovery Fund, encouraged especially by the southern member states. But was this the only reason? And I think, to be honest, this was not the only reason. I think there was a lot more going on here. I think in essence, we are talking here also about, let's say, a political package. I think you can compare it with the decision of the introduction of the euro. That was also a political decision with a clear idea to create an ever closer union. And when you have a close look to the package, which is now decided, you see the same philosophy, the same approach. And that makes, for me, the package problematic on some issues. For example, the EU will go with this package to the capital markets to borrow a lot of money. So that creates a big EU debts. So in the future, the EU will become a kind of a debt union. That means that also we are passing on problems to our next generations, because in the future, still we have the debts, so we have to pay back at a certain time. That's one of the problems I see. The other problem which I see with this package is that the EU has also decided to introduce EU taxes. That's also a new element, also part of that package. That are for me two problematic issues, which in my view means that the EU takes with this package a new step in the direction of an ever closer union. I think it's important to realize that because everybody is talking about solidarity, and I'm really support. I agree. We have to be support solidarity within the EU, but we have to realize that behind these beautiful words about solidarity, there is another reality. A reality of concentration of powers at EU level, which makes also the southern member states more dependent on Brussels, because Brussels decides where you can use the money for example. So that's the first reaction to your question, Jack.
Thank you so much. And you also mentioned something about that Brussels has more control of this money. Can you say something about are there some conditions attached to this recovery package that that you think point in the direction of that kind of extra control?
Well, indeed, Brussels has created a kind of a framework, a regulator framework for these funds. So, for example, it means that you have to use the money partly for digitalization. You have to use it partly for the Green Deal, and so on. And I don't say that I am against digitalization. To be honest, to be clear, but just to make clear that it is in the end that Brussels decides in which direction the money will go.
I see. Thank you. Then I have a question for Mr. Gombaci. We saw a couple of numbers. We discussed very briefly a few things on the recovery package. But if you take a look at your experience from Southern Europe, living in Brussels, coming from Italy, can you tell us something about how this package is perceived in Southern Europe, especially probably Italy as being one of the hardest hit countries last year in the first wave of Corona?
Thank you for the questions, and thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to speak about this topic, because even when there was the lowest moment between the Netherlands and Italy, I was speaking with a lot of ECPM members from Netherlands to keep the relations at least in a good shape. So for me, it's a very touching topic, the one that we are about to discuss. Now, coming to your questions, let's try to understand what happened before answering. Yesterday, it was 1 year anniversary of the scene of the dead body getting out from the Bergamo hospitals in the military vehicles. And 1 year ago, I remember I was here in Brussels, and I was very touched by that moment. And looking at this scene, being an Italian, it was very, very touching. And all Italians were quite moved about what was happening there. At the same time, the Italian government, led at the time by Giuseppe Conte, and he was a prime minister that was supported by the populistic five-star movement and the left-wing Partito Democratico, asked the European Union to activate the European Civil Protection Mechanism. That is a solidarity mechanism for the European countries to help the country in need with technical support, with some asset. Italy asked for face masks. Italy asked for military vehicles. Italy asked also for economic help at the time, because we were having the hospital and the public health system in crisis. And this is another problem of Italy. But let's analyze what happened in that time. No member state replied, no one. And in Italy, even on the side of the pro-Europe politicians, the federalist group, someone started to raise the voice against the European Union. And it was the first time that inside certain Italian parties, someone started to speak bad about the European Union. Even the Italian ambassador to the Italian permanent representative to the European Union at one moment had to write an opinion piece in Politico Europe, one of the biggest newspaper in Brussels in Europe, underlying that no member state helped Italy in that moment. After, step by step, some European countries started to help Italy in sending a face mask and other kind of helps. In that moment, there was a big clash between two different cultures. Let's say the southern cultures, the Italian culture, and the so-called, and I don't like personally, I don't like the word, but it was used in the newspaper, the frugal countries like Netherlands. And what I was interviewed a lot in the Italian televisions, in European televisions or newspaper, and as Italians, I couldn't say something. I couldn't say that Netherlands was wrong in what they were doing, in what they were thinking, because it was a different kind of approach of the pandemic. And of course, I agree with the member of the European Parliament that I'm following, and I appreciate his activities, because he said at one moment that, of course, there is something behind of it. There is something behind the recovery fund by itself. It was not just to help Italy because Italy is a nice country and was in difficulties. No, there is something different. There is something like to create a sort of, not yet, but a sort of mutualization of debt in which the European countries will be more linked to Brussels. How the recovery fund, when it was set up, was perceived by Italians in a very nice way. Let's be honest, everyone, even the most Eurosceptic parties, agrees that the recovery fund should be accepted, with condition or without conditions, but we should accept that money, because in this moment, Italy cannot afford to continue and to survive not only the pandemic, but also the economic crisis without this money. So this gave a push towards a more pro-Europe stances in Italy. So this is something that was very well perceived. Unluckily, this is my personal opinion, unluckily, I think that all this good perception about the European Union that was gained during the recovery fund discussion and the approval of the recovery fund probably is lost during this science mess here in Brussels, but this is another topic.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, that's a very clear signal about the recovery plan and how it was received in Italy. So yeah, I'm wondering, Mr. Ruijsen, how are the reactions in these more northern countries among your colleagues, maybe in European Parliament? Do you stand alone in this skeptical approach towards this recovery plan, or can you see that there is a lot of support among, for example, parliamentarians from Northern Europe, Northwestern Europe?
Yes, well, yes, indeed, I'm indeed skeptical, but I was not the only one who was skeptical, as Mr. Combaci already explained. There was also, let's say, especially I think it's the first stage of the process, kind of, let's say, a clash maybe between the southern culture and the northern culture, and a discussion about how to proceed now, and how can we go forward, how can we tackle this crisis. So I'm not alone, but when you see in the European Parliament, when you have a look on what were the reactions in the European Parliament, then you can say that a majority of the European Parliament supported this package. Also, a lot of MEPs from the northern part of Europe. But that's has also one of the reasons for that is I think that these MEPs realized that we are not talking just about a fund for solidarity, but we are also talking about a new step in the process of European integration. And I can say, especially the federalists in the European Parliament, like Guy Verhofstadt and so on, yeah, that was, let's say, one of was reaction of Hosanna. They were really happy with the whole package because they realized that we are setting a new substantial step in the direction of federalization. But now, the reality is that maybe we have to leave that discussion behind us because the package is now adopted. It's adopted. It's also adopted by the Netherlands. So the package is now reality. But still, I'm convinced that I think there was no need to organize this specific Corona fund because in our normal budget, we had already a lot of funds, the cohesion funds, the structural funds, and there you have a lot of unused money, billions of unused money, which we could have used directly for helping Italy and so on. So I didn't see a need for creating, I call it a kind of a debt fund, a fund financed by creating a lot of debts. We could use, in my opinion, I think our regular budget for it.
Okay, thank you. And maybe a question attached to this, because we are talking about entrepreneurship and and about small and medium-sized enterprises. Do you think Brussels can succeed in bringing the money there where it belongs, namely to directly to those small and medium-sized enterprises? Or how will this be sort of checked or accounted for?
Yes, I agree. I agree that indeed we have to use this money for the SMEs, or a big part of the money, because I fully agree with you that SMEs are for our economy very important all over Europe. So we have to realize that especially SMEs faces big problems last year due to the lockdown, due to the economic crisis. So for me, it's not a question whether we have to support them. We have to support them. And now we have the package. Now let's use the package. That's no question for me. But but I think there's also a main responsibility for the member states itself. When you have a look at the situation in the Netherlands, it is a national parliament, or a national government who has arranged a big support package for the SMEs. So for us, the EU package is just, let's say, a really small element of the support which is needed. And we have to realize that until now, nothing is paid from the recovery fund. And now we are now already for more than 1 year in the crisis, and we are still waiting for support from the recovery fund. And I have the impression that maybe we can just activate the recovery fund maybe at the end of the crisis. That's quite late, in my opinion. We should have used, I think, our regular budget more and effective.
Thank you. That's very clear. How to say, like, appeal to Europe to think about what in regular way we can do. Now, before we go to ask Mr. Gombaci about Italy, I would first of all like to remind our viewers, please, if you have any questions to any of the speakers today, please feel free to write your comments under this live stream in the comment section, and we'll be answering your questions shortly after this round of few questions is over. So please don't hesitate. Let's go to Italy then, because when Mr. Gombaci, since you are closely watching the situation in Italy, Do you think this recovery fund is truly helping? Does the money that comes or will come from Brussels, because I hear that nothing is paid yet, but do you think it will really go to the businesses, the local small, medium-sized businesses who need it the most?
It should. It should. It's definitely it should. And I think that there will be a lot of pressure to the Italian government to do like this, because once something that really changed in the last month in Italy is the government. Of course, you have followed the political crisis and the appointment of Mario Draghi as a prime minister. And one of the reasons why Mario Draghi became prime minister is also to have a guarantee that those money will be spent well, because the previous government was doing a lot of it already wrote a recovery plan for Italy that was honestly was a shame, because if you compare the Italian recovery fund plan of the previous government with the French one, with the Spanish one, with the Greek one, the Italian plan had like 5 pages. The French one has 500. So you understand that there was a huge problem about this. And I understand also the European partners that asked to the Italian political system to be accountable of it, because it's not possible to receive a lot of money and not knowing exactly how to spend that money. Even there was some politician that proposed to renovate the stadium, the football stadium of Fiorentina with the money of recovery fund. Okay, so this was too much. Okay, and I understand that in that case Matteo Renzi did a political crisis for many reasons. One was also that the previous Italian government was not enough responsible for writing a good plan for the recovery fund. And now, as a prime minister, there is Mario Draghi. Mario Draghi, you can like it or not as president of the ECB, but is really someone that has a very good connection in Europe, has a very good reputation among all the different European prime minister and president of state, head of state, and he knows how to do his own work. And this is very important, because even in the Draghi cabinet, all the ministers that he appointed to follow the recovery fund are very high-level profiles of ministers. And trust me, I don't think that with Mario Draghi there will be any politician that will propose to renovate the stadium, the football stadium of Fiorentina, of Juventus, or AC Milan. That money should be spent, and Mario Draghi already gave some indication that to give it directly to the productive sector, and including SMEs, because we have to remember that 90% of the productive activities in Italy are done by SMEs, not just small and medium, but even micro enterprises, done with 1 person, 2 person maximum. And this is something that Italy, without this small, medium enterprise, without the creativity of these entrepreneurs, is nothing, because the Italian economy is based on that. And Mario Draghi knows it, and I'm quite sure that he will do his maximum to spend that money well, and to put that money directly in the productive activities, to create money, to let circulate in the money, and will not give that money to the friends of friends. That was the biggest scare of the previous Italian government. So I think that you touched a very good point with this question, and especially with the small medium enterprises, there will be a lot of pressure even among other politicians. I'm thinking, for example, about the League led by Matteo Salvini, that is defending the small and medium enterprises, especially in northeast of Italy, where Lega is governing almost all the regions. And thanks to this system, this political change, I'm much more confident about the Italian government than I was of the previous one.
Okay, thank you so much for your analysis, and very useful, I think, also for our viewers to understand what is the developments in the political sphere in Italy as well. Before we go to our audience, I have one more small question to Mr. Ruijsen, because you mentioned before that Europe is, for the first time, actually borrowing a lot of money on the capital market. And that means that Europe will have, as an organization, will have debts. And my question is a little bit to ask you to elaborate on this a little bit. What kind of long-term risks and consequences do you see from this this new step, so to say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what we see now is that all governments, but also and now also the EU is creating a lot of debts, and I can understand that because now we need to invest in the economy, and you are seeing that a lot of and different levels of the governments, the debt level will increase. Let's say, now the interest is quite low, so it's quite we can deal with that. But what will happen in the future when the debts will grow and grow and grow, and what will happen then in the case that the interest rate will increase? Then, the government has to pay a lot for the interest. And then that means that maybe in the future, the government is mainly, let's say, paying for interest and for, let's say, paying off the debts instead of investing in the economy. Mm-hmm. So that's the main issue I see. Well, indeed, we are now working on our current economy. We are now investing in our current economy, but I have great concerns about the long-term consequences. Indeed, different people who studied economy warned us, please be careful by creating so many debts. And I think the answer is, we have to realize that recovery, which is needed now, is not only an issue of money, it's also an issue of better regulation. We have also to give room for entrepreneurs to develop, to invest, and that means that we have also to decrease, let's say, the level of regulation. So it's a combination. We have to combine. On the one hand, we have to invest in the economy. So entrepreneurs need money, but we have also to streamline our regulations and to create, let's say, a business-friendly environment.
I see. And if I may continue a little bit on this subject, because I think it's a very crucial subject for many entrepreneurs, and I'm glad that you raise it here. How would you see, or how would you hope for this kind of deregulation? What is that can be done in Brussels? What, for example, the Commission could do to decrease the amount of rules and regulations, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, Mrs. von der Leyen, she's quite ambitious on that point, and that's important. I'm happy with that. So, Commission proposed, let's say, that she will work on the one in, one out principle. That means that she promised that when a new regulation is adopted, then they will delete another regulation. That's the basic principle. So we will have, from the Parliament, we will indeed monitor whether the Commission is also indeed working on that basis to avoid red tape and administrative burden for the entrepreneurs. So we have written also some written questions on that issue to make clear that also for the ECPM, for our MEPs, better regulation for the entrepreneurs is a very big, great issue.
Okay. Thanks a lot, because indeed, I'm sure that entrepreneurs need to have somebody who fights for their interests, in the sense of, you know, rules and regulation and limitation of red tape. So I also would like to ask this to Mr. Gombaci. When you take a look at Italy, what does the European Union need to keep in mind in order to, you know, in the best possible way, implement this this new recovery package?
Yeah. Have you ever tried to open a company in Italy?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, never try it. Never try it. Don't try it, never, because it's hyper complex. It's almost impossible for a young guy, or I was young when I tried to open a company. But can you imagine for an entrepreneur of 40, 50 years old, what can happen? There is no digitalization, for example. You have to bring the paper to the Chamber of Commerce in person. You have to take the appointment. Generally, the lunch break in Italy is very long, so it lasts like 2 hours. So it's you have to wait outside a lot of times. You cannot produce at the same time. So it's extremely very complex. And part of the Italian economic system is not done also to have families. This is another important topic, because of course we have to cut the red tapes, we have to cut the bureaucracy, we have to cut the complex procedures, but also we have to create a family-friendly environment, because otherwise there will be no entrepreneurs doing this, because you all know that as entrepreneurs, you don't work from 9 to 5. You work 24 hours per day. And when you work 24 hours per day and there is no family-friendly environment, you are in a position that creating a family is very complicated. And without a family, you teach me this, but without the family, it's not possible to continue to have the society as we wanted. So all this has to come together, and the recovery fund should be focused as well on the digitalization, on the innovation of the Italian public administrations, and also to create a family-friendly environment. I think that this could be 3 main pillars for the new Italian government led by Mario Draghi. And I don't want to promise anything. The Italian political system is very unreliable. So we always have to challenge. We have a lot of challenges ahead. But I think that with this government, we are really in the correct path. And without it, I would have a lot of doubt. With this, and I'm speaking now I'm not speaking as a journalist, I'm speaking to Italian with an international audience. I ask you to give confidence to this Italian government and trying to help it in some cases, if there will be these possibilities, because this is one of the best things that we could have in this moment in Italy. So give that the confidence, and let's hope and let's work all together to avoid that this recovery fund will be spent in unused stuff, creating more debt. But this recovery fund should be spent in the correct things to create the possibilities, to create even more possibilities for the economies to survive and to prosper in the future.
Thank you for also this very good and telling example about starting a business and the red tape that comes with it. I think this is also one of the things that Mr. Ruijsen is very much eager to work on in his work, and I'm very glad that there are members of European Parliament who stand up for starting entrepreneurs and for small and medium-sized businesses and for this family-friendly environment. So wonderful to have this discussion with you and to hear that actually people are doing quite some work on this. I would now like to go for the last couple of minutes of these sessions to some of the questions that came forward from our audience on Facebook. And I have a question from Aaron here. And Aaron says, entrepreneurs need to be mobile. How will the vaccine passport or possible vaccine passport impact that mobility? Is there one of you who would like to comment on this question, or the vaccine passport and entrepreneurship?
Yes, maybe a short reaction. I wonder whether I see that a lot of people are, let's say, happy with that green certificate, that passport, but I wonder whether in the end this passport is really effective. We have to realize that it will take another couple of months before we have these kind of certificates. The decision in Parliament and Council, I think, will not take before the summer. And then before the whole passport is introduced, I think then we are living in the autumn sometimes like that. And then you can question what's then the additional value of this certificate, because we all hope that in the summer, the main part of a lot of people are vaccinated already. Well, I'm a little bit skeptical about the passport, because you are creating also a kind of let's say, new split in the society. You have category, you have people who are vaccinated, and then they can show the green passport, and they will get their freedom back. But you will have also a category people without such a passport, and they are still in a situation of restrictions and so on. So I'm a little bit skeptical about this passport, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. Then we have a question from Lucien from the point of subsidiarity. The question is, how can we organize that ideas and responsibilities come from bottom up instead of from top down, from the Commission and from government leaders? Can I ask any of you about this question? Yes, please.
I can say that something that I agree with some proposal. For example, in Italy, I don't know exactly how the Netherlands are under the administrative structure, but in Italy there are the regions. There are 20 regions, and I think that I would really like to see the more reliable under the economics aspect regions in Italy to manage the recovery fund, because I'm a big fan of the subsidiarity principles, and I think that even in that case they should be used, because there are some regions that they already have demonstrated to use even the EU funds. In the previous years, they used the EU funds very well. They have a positive balance in their administration. So I say that, okay, for those regions that have already demonstrated to use well the EU funds, you can give them the possibilities to manage the money of the recovery fund, because all these monies are managed at the local level, are much well managed than at the central level, or even worse at the European level, that are far away from the needs of all the different and single local structures. Because of course, someone in Brussels that says someone to Sicily how to manage the money is quite difficult, but as well someone from Rome to say how to manage someone in Finland, the money in Finland. Okay, because we are different and we have to accept this. We are not all the same. We have different culture, different mentality, different approach, and we have to give the people who have already demonstrated, or the people who can give some guarantees that those money can be spent well, to manage that money. Otherwise, you are creating the opposite effect, that someone that doesn't know the culture, the aspect, the approach of a local communities will say to these local communities how to do it, creating a huge mess.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Ruijsen, what about subsidiarity from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I think a bottom-up approach is really important. Also in the, let's say, the spending of these kind of funds. So member states have to prepare their plans, and I think it's really important that the member states then also involve the regional and the local authorities in developing their plans. then you can take on board the ideas and the wishes from the local communities and also the ideas from the entrepreneurs. So that's really important, I think. But on the other hand, there is a kind of a monitoring control necessary from the side of the European Union. Otherwise, we will end in a situation that money is going to stadiums and musea, for example, and that's not what we want. So we have to find the right balance.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, thank you so much. And with this right balance, I think it's a good moment to wrap up our session, because we are talking already now for 1 hour, and I'm sure there is a lot more to say, and I have a lot more questions that I personally would like to ask, and probably the audience as well. But I have good news for you. This is not the only event. This is just the introduction event on entrepreneurship. Next week, there will be the second event where there will be much more in-depth on some of the recovery packages, some discussion and what it means, particularly for entrepreneurs. So I warmly invite you to join our session, our ECPM session live stream next week, so that you can learn more about the way that this is going to work out in the future in practice for small and medium-sized enterprises. And with that, I would like to say a big thank you to both Mr. Ruijsen and Mr. Gombaci for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you to you.
Thank you, Jack. It was a pleasure.
Indeed, pleasure. It was very nice and open discussion, and I hope that in the other sessions, in the other live streams, it will be really a similar kind of environment. And once again, don't forget to join us and be with us in the next seminars. Thank you so much for now, and see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
We may not impress everyone. Some may even see us as insignificant, but the truth is, we are not here for power. We are here to make a difference. And that's often in the little things, small focus shifts, amendments that matter. Like I said, we are not here for power or might. We are here to empower faith, peace, love, life. We are here to give a voice to justice, to freedom, families, communities. We are here to stand up for what is right. In a time when people more and more distrust political institutions and their intentions, we believe that trust can be rebuilt. But not by a European Union that promises to be the solution for everything. We stand for an EU that facilitates, that finds solutions for key matters, and holds back where that's more appropriate. A European Union that acknowledges that that union was once built on a firm foundation of Christian principles and of Christian values, where people from minorities have the fundamental freedom to be different from the majority, respected and protected. We believe in an economy that works for people and the planet, because we aim to build a future that is full of hope, where people are empowered by initiative and ownership, where human dignity is not seen as optional, but inviolable, where healthy families are recognized as the basis for thriving societies. As different as we are, we know one thing, that we will always find each other in the same God, in the same faith. We are not here for power. We are here to be the voice of what is right. We are ECPM, the European Christian Political Movement.